So, um, yeah, the different types of transactions. We're going to talk about the roles that you play, how you get paid. We've talked about that. Obviously, for the different types of transactions, we have sales and we have leasing, but we also have 1031 exchange. It's a 1031 tax deferred exchange, not a tax-free. We are not going to talk a bit about that. This course is not going to even touch on, since it's just an intro about the 1031. The other thing you need to remember is you have two different buyers or two different sellers. So even though I'm talking about sales and leasing as being, sales is one activity, if it's an owner or an investor, those are different ways or different methods you would use. For instance, is it an investor selling his investment property, but it's got a tenant in it, might be sold differently than if it's the owner of the building and the owner of the business, and they're selling their business. They might be selling, I'm sorry, misspoke. They're selling their, don't laugh at me. I see you laughing. It might be the owner of the building and the business, and he might be selling just the building, moving the business, or he could potentially be selling both. So those are actually different ways that you might market the property. Obviously, your role, you're going to be the listing agent or the selling agent. You could also actually be a limited agent, just like you can in the residential world. We're going to add this new thing called tenant rep. Tenant rep's actually big in the commercial world. Representing a tenant that is going in leasing. In the leasing portion of commercial, it is very possible to make a good living just being a tenant rep. Where in residential, we all dread those letters, 10% FMR, right? First month's rent. That's not how it's done in the commercial world. You get paid a percentage of the entire lease. So you're putting someone in at a high lease rate for 5, 6, 8, 10 years. I mean, your commission could be almost virtually the same as it would be if you were selling a $150,000, $200,000 house. Okay? You also can serve as a property manager, which we're not going to touch on in this. We've got a whole separate course about property management, but you can property manage in the commercial world as well. All right? You're going to serve as a guide through the deal, and each side of the guide is very similar but different. As the listing agent, you're guiding your client for a sale, whereas a selling agent, you're guiding your client for a purchase. All right? Tenant rep, you can make a living on just being a tenant rep. All right? You're designed to actually find the terms your client can live with and uphold that are important. There's counseling. I'm a big proponent of counseling, and then more counseling. That's going to help you be able to help you complete your promise to your client faster. If you understand what they're selling, how they're selling it, when they're selling it, why they're selling it, it's going to help you be able to sell it quicker. Same thing with your buyer. How do you get paid? You get paid basically same as the residential. Closing, even if it's a big deal. So there are times, where, especially in the leasing world, you're going to get paid the entire commission when they sign the lease. All right? And you also get commission on renewals as well. I had a deal several years ago, and this was actually bad on my part, and I'm going to admit this, but it was bad on my part. I had a client, we put in Park 100, little 3,000 square foot flex space. The first little bit was office, back was R&D. They took computers and tore them apart and reclaimed all of the metals and then shipped the different metals out. Seems like a very innocuous kind of business, but they made a living at it. Put them in on a 3-year lease. I got paid for that. About 2.5 years later, I was just sitting around one day and I got a phone call from the leasing or the property manager who said, hey, your tenant's lease comes up in 6 months. Are they going to renew? And I completely forgot about it and didn't have any mechanisms in place to remind me to check on my tenant. And I'm like, yeah, let me know. I'll find out and I'll let you know. It took me 5 minutes to realize who the hell he was talking about, because I had to go back through my files and figure out who it was. So I called James. I'm like, hey, James, what's going on? How's it been? I haven't talked to you in about 4 or 5 months. He and I kept up with his business portion, and his son actually went through the residential course. So we had kept up, but not really on a business basis. And I'm like, so how's it going? Are you going to renew? And they're like, yeah, sure, we're going to renew. I said, okay. So I called the other agent back. He's like, if they renew 6 months early, we will not bump the rent. So I called him back and go, hey, you want to sign for another 3 years? And he's like, well, we're not due until, December time. I'm like, right, but if you sign now a new 3-year lease from July, they're going to lock your rate in as what you're paying now with no bump. And he said, well, sure, we'll do that. So we did it, and lo and behold, the seller sold the investment company that owned that building in Park 100, sold it to someone else. So what they did was get all the tenants to re-sign under long-term leases, which bolstered the value of the property, and we'll talk about that, so that when they sold it, they got the highest amount. But it did play out well for my client, because they paid, basically they got 6 years of rent at the same price we went into in 2 3-year segments. And I got paid on the renewal of that lease. That's the key part, because it was still my client. Now, I will tell you that it's not a panacea, because I only got paid half of what I got paid the first time. Got 4% on the first lease for 3 years. I got 6% on the renewal for the next 3 years. So are you an optimist that goes, yes, I got 3%, half, or are you the pessimist that goes, I only got half of what I got paid the first time? It involved about 3 phone calls. So it was a good deal for me. So that's the role that you actually get paid, or how you get paid. We're going to talk about the strategies for success. The biggest strategy is networking. I'm telling you that right now. This is a networking business. You are not going to find a lot of your social media avenues work for commercial like they do for residential. Why? Because it is often seen as more of a business for the commercial real estate agent, rather than, and I don't want to say anything derogatory to the resident. And what I mean by that is most commercial real estate's done 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and not a lot of weekends, not a lot of evenings. And so it's treated more like businesses. You see more commercial guys wearing suits, and the commercial, the ladies wearing dresses. Not that any of the residential guys, I know you do, Dave, all the time, but some people don't. In the commercial world, it is more of a business, and they see it. So there are networking. Your personal network is going to be your biggest strategy. Beat the bushes. Here's the top 10 things that you can do when it comes to being successful. Put your clients first. Sincerely taking care of your clients is critical, all right? Education, obviously I should have put education number 1, but I think the client care is number 1, education's number 2. It is a business. It's an industry where it is constantly changing. There's new technologies in the business of the business. I mean, like the internet. So you've got all those new technologies. Technologies now that affect the way buildings work. You've got smart buildings that you have to keep current on. So keeping your education up is one of the best things that you can do to be successful. And there's all kinds. There's a broad spectrum of education. I'm just going to lump it into that. I mean, you've got education about how to become a better negotiator. You've got education on learning technology on how to search the internet to get better data for your client. You've got education on the properties itself. So there's all kinds of education, and you need to keep current on that. The other thing I'm going to tell you that I see a lot of in the commercial world is specificity. In the residential world, I think we all tend to end up being prostitutes. And what I mean by that is you get a guy that says, hey, I got a lake problem. I got a lake cabin in Lake Lemon. Can you list it? And you're like, well, sure. Oh, okay, well, I've got a condo up on the north side of Indianapolis. Can you list that? Well, sure. I've got a 50-acre farm out in Shelbyville. Well, I can list that too. In the commercial world, you see a lot more of, I only do industrial property, or I only do Class A office space. I don't know anything about retail. I don't understand CAM charges. I don't understand uh, lease backs. I don't understand. But I know the hell out of clear span. I know the hell out of beam height. Is it a drive up, dock door, pull up, drive through, drive in, drive out? So you learning to find a specialty in the commercial world is going to be really key. If you try and become a generalist, I think you will do average. If you try and work on, say, hey, all I do is multifamily, I understand how much it costs to turn over a unit. I know the time frame, so I can help my client. I know what a gross rent multiplier of 140 is versus 110. So becoming a specialist in a commercial world is probably as good as anything else. The sales ability, and what I mean by this is your ability to sell and self-motivate are very important. No one's going to call you, and this light's true in just about any sales job. No one's going to call you in the morning and say, hey, get up, come into work, all right? Prospecting for business, there's an old quote by Bob McCombs that says, prospecting for business is not part of brokerage. It is brokerage. So prospecting for business. I just was at a luncheon the other day and they piped in a video from, and I cannot remember his name, the guy that does the $1 million listings in Los Angeles, the young dark-haired kid. Anyway, irrelevant. The point to that is he was saying that he's on 24/7 and that he has done stuff like being running on treadmills and tapped on Tyler Perry's shoulder, who was running on the other treadmill, and talked to him about listing his house. And by the end of the week, he ended up double-ending his $11 million house simply because he got off the treadmill, walked over and tapped on Tyler Perry and said, I list your house. So I guess that is prospecting and networking, all right? Time management, you got to be really good with time management. Do the things that you don't want to do. I always do those first. If I don't want to do something, it's the first thing I do, and I give myself zero permission to set it aside. Your CRM, your customer relationship management system, do you have a database? What do you guys use to keep constant contact? And there's a blue zillion of them, but everybody needs to be going into those constant contacts so that you can have reminders about touching base with them. I buy a lot of my clothing from Tom James, the clothier. I probably get a email once a week from my guy saying, hey, we've got specials, we've got this, and I have literally probably bought stuff that I hadn't planned on buying, but simply because I got an email from him saying, hey, we've got a special this week on shirts, I bought stuff. So your database is your lifeblood. Remember, you're running a business, so your working hours is number 8. What hours are you actually working? Sure, you can work 10 to 2 every day. No problem. Are you going to make your 12 or 20 million and drive your Ferrari? Probably not. You're probably going to have to work 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or 7 to 6. Obviously, the number one thing, well, it's not the number one, that's why it's number 9, but it is very high, is your integrity. All right? You have to make sure, and if you take care of your client, which was number 1, your integrity is going to follow. The next thing is a proper platform. And what I mean by this is, what company are you working for? There are some companies out there that are excellent in the residential business. We're not going to talk about any of the names. But are they the best company to be if you're planning on doing $3 to $5 million sales in commercial real estate? Okay, that's a rhetorical question, John. You don't have to shake your head. It's up to you to decide. Is that company you're working for the best platform? Are they giving you commercial training? Are they giving you database, how to run your database training? Is everybody in the office have the same mindset as you? You know, if you're the only one coming in doing $3 to $5 million deals and you're the only one wearing the suit and all that, and everybody else is selling farmland to pig farmers, which there's nothing wrong with that, but that's their mind. So let's go a different way. There's a company called Whitetail Properties, all right? Friends of mine. They deal in hunting land, all right? When you go interview with these guys about listing your hunting land, they're literally going to talk to you about what do you hunt with, what gauge shotgun, do you bow hunt, you know, stuff that you wouldn't, because they all have that in common. That's not a company you would want to go work with if you're going to sell office building in downtown Indianapolis. That's what I'm talking about. What platform are you working for? Okay? I'm going to talk about some of the sales skills. And there's 7 sales skills, and these are all in the residential world as well. Organization, personal focus, your database practice, mental and physical fitness. It's tough, you know, sitting at your desk all the time making calls or sitting in your car showing properties. I find that I have to get out and move and walk around or go work out. Otherwise, I gain 30 or 40 or 50 pounds. And I can tell by a good deal if a deal's really good, and I gain a lot of weight because I've been talking too much and not working. Now that's not true, but that's okay. I added in something here: a strong financial understanding. This is probably one of the other keys that I think is completely different from the residential and the commercial world, is the financial knowledge. Do you understand how to read business documents like gross operating income, business reports, analysis? Can you do all of that? Because you're going to have to help your client, whereas in the residential world, we don't do that. So having a strong financial background, you see a lot of what I would call the big boys out there, you know, Marcus and Millichap and Cushman and Wakefield. A lot of these guys have economic degrees or financing degrees or accounting degrees so that they can understand the financial portion of the transaction, especially if they're dealing within the investor type, all right? You obviously have to have good communication skills, and you've got to set goals. I don't care what business you're in, you've got to set goals. You know, how many listings do I want to have this week? How many sales do I want to have? So once again, go back over those. Organization, that's 1. Personal focus, 2. Database is 3. That's a good sales skill you need. Fitness, both mental and physical, strong financial understanding, communication, and goals. All of those are going to get you through the skills or the sales skills that you would need to master this industry. All right? All right. Any questions real quick? We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.